So what's the difference between inquiry and problem-based learning? It's a question that I've had teachers ask me often when I introduce the approach. And honestly, it's a good question because the approaches are similar. But there is one key difference. And I'm here at Jones Valley Teaching Farm in the heart of Birmingham, Alabama, because I think being at a farm, especially an urban farm, will give us some insight on the differences between the two. So, inquiry. Well, bottom line, to me, the difference is that inquiry is about asking a question. And problem-based learning is about solving a problem. Think about that difference for a second. And think about all of the questions that you could ask at a farm, and all of the problems that farming in today's society has and encounters, and especially urban farming. Well, if teachers ask kids questions, and look behind me and think of all the questions that are coming to your mind about teaching, about farming, and how you grow crops in a city. I'm a science educator, so there's all kinds of science that I'm seeing about how fertilizer works and how pollination works. There's all kinds of questions. But then there's also a whole set of problems here with farming in a city. Water, how do you get water in? How do you irrigate well? What about pest management? What about pollution? And you're listening to, you've got all of the city problems inherent that are cutting in on farming in the city. Well, hopefully you're seeing the distinction. Questions or problems? What are you asking your kids? Are you asking them a question? And it doesn't have to be science. Think about the literature that kids could be reading that has to do with the agrarian lifestyle. Are you asking them to find answers to a question? Well, that's inquiry. And it can be done in an English class. Or are you asking them to solve a problem like, let's think about social studies. What about the social problems that people who live in a city have with getting fresh food? Well, that's problem-based, and kids could be looking across the country in a social science way, or even historically, about how people have solved that problem. Inquiry and problem-based learning, as I mentioned before, there are lots of similarities. Well, both are student-centered, that makes sense, and both are innovative, that makes sense, but one of the key things that makes them similar is they can both be highly authentic, like I've talked about here. Because you can get kids to ask authentic questions, and you can get kids to solve authentic problems. And when you do that, then you ramp inquiry and problem-based learning up to a whole new level, because kids care deeply about the questions that they're asking and the problems they're solving. Hope that helps.